In Deshawn Jackson's introductory press conference, he says that Delaware State is not rebuilding. I have an idea of what he means and what that looks like in his first year as a collegiate head coach. Oh, yeah, it's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make a Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. I can't be the only person who would never call the Black app X by its new name. Sorry. Your mama named you Cassius. No, I'm joking. Shout out to Coming to America, though. We'll wrap up today's episode. With a look at the theme of Shaw's head coaching search. They've landed on two potential hirings, and this time they finally got their guy, but both of them come back to one core principle. But we start off today's episode with bold statements by the Jacksons. One is Tremaine at Prairie View A&M. He made a bold statement about what kind of program that he's going to build PV to be. And then also Deshawn at Delaware State, who made a bold claim about a team that has not seen a lot of success as of recent. And for Deshawn Jackson, he says Delaware State is not rebuilding. Okay, what does that look like? Because let's be honest about it. Delaware State is rebuilding. So I don't take what he says literal as if, oh, we're not in a rebuild. I look where you guys came from. I think he more so means what this year is going to look like. It's not a process up to success. That's what it really means. That's what it really looks like. Or excuse me, that's what he really means. And I'm going to break down what it is that looks like as we continue with this. I'll say this, though. Coach Jackson, in his introductory press conference, it was broken into two segments, which is, I say probably pretty regular, but I don't see the Q&A for everybody. You had the intro speech where he gets up there and he talks to the crowd listens, the crowd claps, all of that stuff, right? And then after everybody speaks, they hand the mic around for people to give questions, and Coach Jackson gives the answers. I have pretty much two takeaways or two things I really want to hone in on, and one comes from each section of the press conference. So I'll start off with the speech part. I felt like I was in a locker room. I felt like I was in a locker room because of the way that Deshawn Jackson was delivering his message. He came buttoned up, suit and tie and all of that, but I felt like he was in coach mode. I felt like he was extremely energetic. Parts of his speech felt a little bit rah-rah to me, and when I say that, it's just a description. I wouldn't say it's a positive or a negative, but what I mean by that is it felt like he was trying to pump me up. It felt like he was trying to pump up the crowd, and it felt as if he was trying to give the energy as if we were about to go out and play the game, right? But the biggest quote is, we're not rebuilding. We don't have time to play. We don't have time to waste. We're doing it right now. That was way less measured than I think most coaches would step into their intro press conference and say, right? Like, I think you would talk about goals, but to say year one, essentially he's saying year one, we're going to get it done. We're going to not be at the bottom of the division. We're going to be competing for the championship. That's the way that I hear it, right? I'm not saying, even though somebody did ask him about the Celebration Bowl, and he said we're going to win it year one. So he did. He wasn't short on confidence. I'll say that. But this statement in general didn't feel arrogant. This statement in general didn't feel cocky. I wouldn't even say it came from a confident related place. I really wouldn't. I would say it was very matter of fact of we have a job to do. And we're here to win championships. And that's what we're about. At the end of the day, that is what we are about, winning championships. There's nothing confident about that. If you don't step into a job of this magnitude with the impression that you're going to win championships, what are you doing it for? I don't know if most people come in and talk about the timeline in which they're going to win one, especially if the timeline was year one. But at the same time, I didn't get any cockiness, no arrogance from this. I just got, there's a job to do and we got to get it done. Delaware State is rebuilding. I do not expect them to win a championship year one. I think that's going to be very difficult because you're coming from a team that won 2 games over the last 2 years. So at the worst, it's a start over. But when he says it's not a rebuild, to me, that just means it's not a process. And that's fair. That's fair. I think that in order to be a true rebuild, you kind of have to be going on for 2-3 years. Is okay, step 1, step 2. That's how you rebuild. Otherwise, you just bounce back. It's a whole different term for how we describe what you do if you succeed in year 1 when you failed the year prior, right? That's just to be honest, okay? But to me, if you're saying we're not rebuilding, I expect a heavy influx from the transfer portal. If Deshawn Jackson is going to tell me that we're not rebuilding, we don't have time to play, we don't have time to waste, we're doing it right now, you cannot do the things that he's talking about in year 1 with a ton of high school players. You have to go get guys with some collegiate experience. You have to go get some guys who are older. You have to hit the portal. You won 2 games over the last 2 years. This is not a team that's going to come in and just win the MEAC, and I don't think you can trust a bunch of true freshmen to come in and be the thing that sways you. You have to hit the portal if you're trying to get instant results in year 1 if you're Deshawn Jackson. That's my opinion. If you're Deshawn Jackson, you have to hit the portal to get year 1 success on the degree, on the level in which that he's talking about. Which brings me to my recruiting. And this is something that he talked about in the Q&A, because somebody was talking about how there's a lot of talent in Delaware. I have no idea. I have no idea what the talent is like in Delaware. I'm just going to be completely honest with you. I am in Texas. I can tell you what the talent is like in Texas, in Louisiana, in Florida, in Georgia, probably Alabama and California. But for the most part, I'm local. Like, I can tell you that this is the talent. I don't know what the reputation is of Delaware high school football, but this person said, hey, we got a lot of talent here. To which he says, and it was a statement, he didn't even have to respond to this. So I thought this was interesting. This was unprovoked information, essentially, or unrequested information, I should say. It was provoked, but not requested. He said, we're going to put a fence around Delaware. Okay, makes sense. You're in Delaware State. Of course, you're going to recruit your state. Nothing big there. But then he talked about how we're going to go to Baltimore, we're going to go to Philly, we're going to go to Washington, and I played in all of them places. Okay, I look at my map, and I've heard the comments, so I didn't mention Philly the first time. I think it just slipped my mind, to be honest, but I think I also thought that Baltimore was just closer, or Washington, one of them. I don't know, man. But anywho, those are 3 very close areas in which Deshawn Jackson says, we're going to put a fence around all of that. Philly, cool. That's you. I almost feel like Philly is your territory. If we talking about all these other guys, Philly is your territory. If we talking about California, which he also did throw in there, that is your territory. Those are property of Deshawn Jackson. Then we start talking about DC. That might be up for grabs. Baltimore, that's definitely up for grabs. So now we're going to see if he can compete with Morgan State. I don't know what Deshawn Jackson's reputation is in the city of Baltimore. I don't know what it's like in Washington. I probably would think it's better in Washington. If he left a mark everywhere he went, he was in Washington for longer, if I'm not mistaken. Let's make sure I'm not giving out false information now, because I would not want to do that. But the point is, he has 2 states that belong to him. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he was in Baltimore for a year. That's what I thought. So, in general, those are the states that he's going to hit the hardest. Delaware, Washington, D.C., not a state, but whatever. Baltimore. These are the cities he's going to hit. He's going to hit the state of Delaware. He's going to hit the state of California, and he's going to hit Philly, D.C., and Baltimore. That's what we're going to do. All right? Cities, states, districts, whatever. That's where he's trying to put his fence. And he's going to say California is home, which brings me to this coaching staff. And he brings in the head coach of the high school that he worked at for a year. Right? We talked about this, his time at Long Beach Wilson. He spent a year there, and I don't want to rehash everything. I want to focus more so on Travis Clark. Travis Clark was the head coach at Long Beach Wilson, and he's been coaching in California as a head coach for the last decade and a half. The addition of him to the coaching staff for Deshawn Jackson, great. When you have these NFL players to HBCUs, basically, forget all that. When you have an inexperienced head coach, I don't care where they came from. If you have an inexperienced head coach, you want to see what type of staff that he's putting around him, because this is the first time that Deshawn Jackson has been a head coach. It's only the second year that he's ever coached. So I want to have somebody with a lot of experience by his side. I want to have somebody with a lot of experience who can advise him. And that's what I see from Travis Clark. This was clearly a mentor to him. He talked about when he got the call, it was back to back. Hey, do you want to coach college football? He called him. Travis Clark called him, and somebody else called him. At first, he was just like, man, I'm enjoying the high school ranks. I just got here. But you know what? They didn't pass this up. They end up talking. And Travis Clark is the one who convinced him to go out for the job. It wasn't just offered to him, but to go out for the job. Travis Clark has a championship under his belt. He took Long Beach Wilson to the championship last year. And like I said earlier, he has 15 years of experience as a California head coach. If we're talking about recruiting, Deshawn Jackson is already that guy in California. I already think he can step into many rooms and recruit those guys. But what about the person who's been coaching in California on the high school ranks for 15 years, probably played against some of these guys, probably coached some of their brothers, maybe coached some of them. He just got to Long Beach Wilson, so he's got people from his last stop in Lawndale that he also could rely on. There's a bevy of information, a bevy of knowledge, and a bevy of reputation that they can all bring to the state of California. If we're talking recruitment and we're talking about advising, the addition of Travis Clark to Deshawn Jackson's staff in Delaware State is going to be one of the biggest decisions that he's made. It's his assistant head coach and safeties coach. But in all honesty, to me, he's going to be the advisor. He's going to be the one who helps guide the first-year head coach on that experience. They're both doing this college thing for the first time, but one has led an entire team before, and that person has the ear of Deshawn Jackson. Great hire. Let's push forward to the other Jackson. Both talking spicy, both ain't playing around, both making bold claims, and they ain't even stepped on the field for spring practice yet. I've talked about Deshawn, but what about Tremaine? Tremaine Jackson out there at Prairie View A&M. He said, we ain't just going to be good for the SWAC. We're going to be good for the whole FCS. I like that attitude. As a TSU fan, I hope it ain't true. But as an HBCU fan, I like that attitude. Let's continue talking about it as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Have you ever forgot about a subscription? I know I have. Come on. We all been there. Every year something new come out. I'm using this streaming platform instead of this streaming platform, but I'm still paying for the one that I don't use anymore because it's just not on my mind. I might flip through occasionally, but I barely use this. And that time go on, I ain't using it at all. Okay, cool. How about we go to Rocket Money to help me eliminate this subscription that 2 years, 3 years down the line I have forgotten about? Do I speak from experience? Maybe. But Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Listen, for me, the best touch is the fact that they monitor my spending and allow me to build towards my goals. It helps me remain accountable, and I want you to do the same thing. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on, rocketmoney.com/locked-on. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On College Football. I can't remember what game comes on today. I think it is the Georgia game. No, it is the Notre Dame game. I do know that, so check them out. But anyway, Tremaine Jackson, he did it first technically, because his intro press conference was on Tuesday. And I know I said that we were supposed to be doing FAMU today. I meant to acknowledge this in the beginning. That's on me because I actually completely forgot that Deshawn Jackson's intro was today or Wednesday. So that's on me. I forgot about that. But also, there's some big news out of Alabama State. So I'm going to shift them to Friday. They just lost 2 big time defensive coaches. So that's something that we need to watch out for. And I want to talk about that. Anyway, to another SWAC school, PV. The quote of the week, I don't care what else is said. We're not rebuilding at Delaware State was great. I love the energy, but there's no better quote this week, and there probably won't be a better quote until we get closer to spring ball than what Tremaine Jackson said about the expectations for Prairie View A&M. And I'm going to give you the full quote. You probably only heard part of it. I'm going to tell you the part when we get to the part that you've heard, but I want to give the whole quote. We're going to be prepared at a high level to compete not only on the SWAC, but nationally and across the country. We're not here. This is the part that you probably heard. We're not here to be an elite SWAC school. We're here to be an elite FCS program. Some people are going to be butthurt about that. Some people are going to feel like, why you say we're not just here to be an elite SWAC school. I hate that attitude from like the response. I love this attitude, but the response, oh, what's wrong with being an elite SWAC school? I don't think you're going to hear many of it because everybody loves this quote, but there's going to be some people who are a little bit butthurt and be like, oh, no, why you have to say that? He didn't have to say we just not here to just be an elite SWAC school. That ain't good enough. I'm going to be honest with you. No, it's not. And that's not disrespectful. You want to be nationally good. There is no conference out there. There's no team who wants to just be conference good. That don't exist. So I think that we operate in a certain bubble on the HBCU landscape. We got the Celebration Bowl and things of that nature, and I get it. I respect it. But when it comes to things like this, we need to break out that bubble. And I'm not saying that everybody has it, but the truth of the matter is there's some people who feel like, oh, what, HBCU ain't enough? It ain't about not being enough. It's just, what other, you think in the Mountain West, people are, oh, yeah, I just want to be Mountain West good. No. You think in the SEC, I just want to be SEC good. No. You think in the MEAC, they just want to be MEAC good? You think in the SWAC, they just want to be SWAC good? If they do, that's wrong. I don't care that there's no playoff for you to reach for. I don't care about that. North Carolina Central don't want to just be MEAC good. I can guarantee you that. Jackson State don't just want to be SWAC good. I can guarantee you that. There's a reason that these programs are good on a year in, year out basis because they reach for the skies. It doesn't matter if the eventual goal is the Celebration Bowl. You can be nationally good without going to the playoffs. It's this like quote unquote sellout mentality that I feel like some people approach it with that I'm not with. If you got to, I know I haven't been really answering my comments a little bit lately, but if I see something about that, we can have a conversation about it. Because if you feel that way, let me know. I don't get it. I don't get it personally. But when I hear this quote, the quote that you've probably all seen, we're not here to be an elite SWAC school. We're here to be an elite FCS program. I hear two things. I see two things and I think about them. One, I see his background and where he came from. Second thing that I see is PV's campus. PV has a good-looking campus. I'm going to be honest with you. PV has a good-looking campus. And when you hear people talk about their facilities, it's raved about. You say, man, these are some of the best facilities in the FCS. So if I have some of the best facilities in the FCS, don't I want to have one of the best programs to go with it? I don't want to be struggling to make a division title. I don't want to be struggling to win the conference. I want to make it to the Celebration Bowl on a consistent basis. If my facilities are the best in this conference and they stack up with places, and mind you, HBCUs always have problem with financing and funding and things of that nature. Okay. So if I'm taking that context and me, the HBCU has one of the best facilities in all of FCS, not just HBCU landscapes. Yeah, I want to be dominant. I want to be dominant. I want to dominate this field. That's me though. That's me. I don't know. Excuse me again. But the second thing I think about is him being a Division II coach. And with him being a Division II coach, there's no idea of I just want to be good. At Valdosta, it wasn't I just want to be good in my conference. I'm trying to go make the playoffs. And that to me is the biggest difference between Division II HBCUs and then FCS HBCUs is that their end goal is the playoffs because they don't have a Celebration Bowl, but then also they get more national respect than FCS HBCUs do, in my opinion. Excuse me. Sorry. But also, he didn't come from HBCU anyway. He came from Valdosta State. And at Valdosta State, they're trying to win championships. He just came from a championship. He didn't win that game, but he came from the championship game. So when he's talking, he's not just thinking conference. He's thinking national. And this is the attitude that everybody should have. It's easy to rag on him now. It's easy to rag on him now. But Connell Maynor famously or infamously said what probably isn't a secret or isn't a minority opinion. Connell Maynor said what was probably not a minority opinion amongst his other coaches. I'm here to win SWAC games. Tremaine Jackson saying we're not here to be a good or elite SWAC school. We're here to be an elite FCS program is the antithesis of that statement. It is the antithesis of the whole sentiment that I am here to win SWAC games. And listen, this is the attitude we're supposed to have. There is no conference, there is no team who should just be okay with being good for their conference. We should all look to dominate beyond that. I understand the Celebration Bowl. That's one to dominate on the HBCU landscape. If you go into the playoffs, that's one to dominate on a national landscape. It doesn't matter. Everybody has goals outside of their program, outside of their conference. And for Tremaine Jackson, it's to not just be elite in the SWAC, it's to be elite in the FCS, to be mentioned as a nationally ranked team on a consistent basis. And I'm going to be honest with you, the best HBCUs have that attitude as well. So when Connell Maynor says, I'm just here to win SWAC games, that's what they pay me for, I don't think that Tremaine Jackson looks at it that way. I don't think that Tremaine Jackson believes that he's getting paid to win SWAC games. I think he believes he's getting paid to win Celebration Bowls, and if he can't make it there, to make it to the FCS playoffs. That's my opinion based on what he said. Let me know if y'all feel different. Let me know if y'all feel different, because I certainly do not. The goal is not the FCS playoffs. That's the bad part. So what does even being an elite FCS program look like? It looks like North Carolina Central's route in an out-of-conference schedule. And the MEAC has more games to work with. So they can do more. They have more flexibility. North Carolina Central can play A&T. They can play Winston-Salem. They can play UCLA. They can play Campbell. They can do all of that in the same season. They ain't got that luxury. Like, if you go play the Division II school, I think the SWAC has 3 out-of-conference games. No, they have 4. I think they have 4. So, like, but the point is the MEAC has 5. They got a lot. They got a lot. But being an elite FCS program, when your goal is to make it to the Celebration Bowl, here's the thing. Your goal every single year, best case scenario for any HBCU in the MEAC or the SWAC, is that you make it to the FCS playoffs. And when you make it to, the best case scenario for any HBCU in the MEAC or the SWAC is that you make it to the Celebration Bowl, which means that you will miss the FCS playoffs. So to ensure that you are a national team, someone who is getting respect beyond just your conference, beyond just HBCUs, you just got to schedule some of these top-notch conferences in out-of-conference schedules, right? Like, so you're going to get your money game in, but maybe you go play a CAA opponent. Maybe you do that. That's what it looks like to me. So you got to go play and defeat them. Last year, they played Northwestern State, Incarnate Word, and Texas A&M Commerce. Is that the only ones they played? I think it is. I think that's the only FCS teams they played. But that's what you got to do, and you got to go out and you got to beat those teams. They went 2-1 in those games, but you're probably looking at some different conferences next year as well. I can't wait to watch it. But anyway, familiarity. The theme of familiarity is very constant for Shaw. And as a Saints fan, I'm very familiar with familiarity. Let's break all of that down as we continue with Locked On HBCU. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. Lamar Manigo, I believe that's how you say his name, or is it Manigo? It's probably Manigo. I had a friend named Manigo. Lamar Manigo is your new Shaw head coach, and this is the second hire that they made for the position this offseason, but I want to give the quote that Manigo gave and why it's the driving force of today's topic. He said, "This is a homecoming for me, and I look forward to working with our talented student athletes to build a program that makes our university. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, this is a homecoming for me, is the driving force of this topic, because Shaw fired Adrian Jones, and they've hired two people to replace him. The first time, it was Greg Ruffin. Greg Ruffin had to decline the job because of health concerns. We hope he's okay and everything with that. But Greg Ruffin was the first head coach for Shaw when Shaw reinstated the football program. Cool. He has a history with Shaw, specifically leading that program. Already feel like you're trying to go back to some glory days. Then you have the eventual coach, Lamar Manigo. Manigo wasn't a head coach, but he was the offensive coordinator from 2016 to 2021. On the website, when they announced the hire, they may have just been trying to pump it up or whatever, but on the website, when they announced the hire, Shaw said this was some of the best statistical seasons in school history. So first head coach of the program when it's reinstated, did pretty well, especially in that first season. Then you have an offensive coordinator who worked for the school and had some of the best statistical outputs in school history. It certainly feels like familiarity is at play here, specifically trying to go back to some glory days. I ain't saying nothing's wrong with that, but there's a clear theme. Shaw, first head coach, Greg Ruffin, bring him back. Shaw, offensive coordinator, 2016, 2021, Lamar Manigo, let's bring him back. You think that's a coincidence? Let me know. My everydayers, who really, my real segment 3, my folk, all right? Let me know. Do you think that's a coincidence? Because I don't. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think Shaw is purposely leaning on familiarity. They want to go with something that they know. And I said, as a Saints fan, I know about that because we did that with Dennis Allen, and I feel like we're about to do that with Aaron Glenn. I like Aaron Glenn. I'll be honest with you. This isn't the Saints platform for me to break it all down, but as a coach, I like Aaron Glenn. I do have some fears about familiarity because it didn't work the first time. But I understand the concept of wanting to go with something that you're familiar with because my Saints are doing it. And I'm very, very, very focused on what the Saints are doing right now. So I get it. If you're looking at Manigo's latest stop beyond that, because just like Aaron Glenn, ironically, the head coaching residence or resume candidacy, it would not be based on you used to be here. It'd be based on some other things as well. It's just that would be the lead in, which is the lead for Manigo. For him, he was Virginia State's head coach, or offensive coordinator last year, and their numbers were second most points, second most yards, fourth leading rusher, second leading passer. They had a really good offense last year. If Virginia Union and Jada Byers wasn't averaging 40, we'd probably be talking about this being the best offense in the CIAA. So the resume is there, but so is the familiarity. And when you go Ruffin, then you go Manigo, I can't help but lead with familiarity because that's what it feels like they're leading with. On tomorrow's episode, Friday, 6:30, don't forget, late show, we're going to look at Alabama State's season and review some of the defensive coaches who have stepped away in what I think is the biggest injury in all of HBCU. So we got it all covered for you. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.